Disney is claiming because of the Paris Olympics, Disneyland Paris will have lower attendance. That is why they are guiding towards lower theme park revenues for the next quarter.
Okay, demand moderation means people didn't want to come to Disney World.
Renegade Online.
Makes you wonder, what would they have said if there weren't any Olympics this year? What are they
Right.
going to say next year when there is no Olympics?
And
Andre, I could have sworn
excuse if there ever was one.
I could have sworn that flooding your country with tourists is a good thing for everybody who's involved in the tourist industry. What the? And Disneyland Paris doesn't even have revenues comparable to anything else inside this division.
Well,
Disney
that's what
World and cruises are huge.
That's what I was going to say. The issue is that it's not like Disneyland Paris in and of itself has ever or will ever for the foreseeable future be able to move the needle with the Walt Disney Company. It has about as big of an impact as a halfway decent performance at the box office of a movie, which is to say very little. Let's look at this. This is what you're going to hear a lot of questions on. A lot of questions on after the call, I'm betting.
Look at this corporate gobbledygook, though. Look at this demand moderation. Sorry, and I will stop here.
No, you're absolutely right, Jonas. At our experiences segment, we expect that the demand moderation we saw in our domestic parks, domestic business in Q3. Okay, demand moderation means people didn't want to come to Disney World. That's what that means. Demand moderation means people didn't show up to Disney World.
You could put lower demand, but that would be that was even too bad. All the crazy phrases.
But listen to what they're saying. The demand moderation, the lack of visitors to our parks and resorts that we saw in Q3, and again, we're talking about April 1st to June 30th, okay, where Memorial Day weekend and one solid month into summer, they saw demand moderation. Now, I will, again, to be fair, we talked about this days ago in our preview for this morning. We did see some demand moderation as per Universal Studios when Comcast reported their figures. Their top line went down by about, I think they said 10% year over year. So they saw some moderation as well. So will Disney's moderation be more severe? And again, as I continue to remind folks, the biggest difference between Comcast and Disney when it comes to Universal Studios parks versus Disney parks, Disney World, especially in Orlando, is that theme parks and experiences are not a primary revenue and OI driver for Comcast. Broadband services is cell phone, internet, and television. That's what drives it. At Disney, if there's a demand moderation in parks and resorts, it's a disaster because that is their biggest top line and bottom line revenue driver for gross revenues and for OI, operating income, basically profitability metric out there for those that aren't familiar with the term. While we're actively monitoring attendance and guest spending and aggressively managing our cost base, I guess unless, of course, you're talking about the Anaheim Park where they just had a strike or they had a threat of a strike and had to increase costs over there for labor probably dramatically. We expect Q4 experiences segment and operating income to decline by mid-single digits versus the prior year, reflecting these underlying dynamics as well as impacts at Disneyland Paris from a reduction in normal customer travel due to the Olympics and some cyclical softening in China. Again,
Elliot, can I stop you for 1 second there?
Go for it, please, Andre.
You missed something. They say there, going back to the first sentence, we saw in our domestic businesses in Q3 could impact the next few quarters.
Yes.
What does that mean? Next 3 quarters? Next 3 years?
Right.
That's a very, very interesting tell right there. I have never seen any more way to make dubious which time frame they're talking about, because there they could easily be saying we don't expect the demand for Disney parks to return to normal for years until we've changed our business. That could be behind that segment. Also, a quick comment, Teddy, on Disneyland Paris. You know what would be really interesting? because in Florida you can compare with Disney World. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Pro and Jonas, here's an interesting comparison. Compare Disneyland Paris with Park Asterix. That is the equivalent of Universal Studios. How is that one stacking up compared to the Olympics? Now, I don't know, but I would imagine that Park Asterix is getting a bump. This is just my hypothesis. Maybe I'm wrong. But still, it would be very interesting to compare how Park Asterix is doing compared to Disneyland Paris. Just
I will
put in there.
Thank you. By the way, I want to throw in here that just confirming, U.S. parks represent 70% of revenue for the park segment here as well. So I'm going to look into that. Thank you very much, Andre.
So,
absolutely.
So demand moderation, what that's talking about is lower attendance. I've never heard of any city or any country wanting the Olympics because it's going to devastate their tourism industry. I thought it was the opposite. So consider me confused, Disney. And you talk about the upcoming quarters, and we're not sure how many quarters it's going to be that will have quote unquote demand moderation. Let me translate that for you all folks. Epic universe.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So two things on that, and you bring up a great point, Andre. What is a few quarters? Because we're talking about clearly the quarter that we're in now at the very least. And then are we also talking about the first fiscal quarter for Disney, which is the last calendar quarter, which would take us through Christmas and New Year's? They seem to also be expecting softening demand there as well. Universal, like you said, on the other hand, is looking at, oh, yeah, we're all excited because by the second quarter next year, we're going to be ramping up with Epic Universe. We expect to see an explosion. And like you said, the Olympics, this took away attendance from Disney. That kind of doesn't make sense because, again, I was in Disney World late January, early February when they have the UDA, the National Dance Competition for high schools and colleges and all this kind of stuff, college and high school teams, I should say. Disney was flying because of the extra attendance, because not everybody's in competition. Not every Olympic athlete is in competition the whole time. And usually when they're on their downtime, either after they conclude or after the Olympics is over, they usually go to places like Disney World or something like this, which is, so that to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but yet that is what we are expected to believe here. And I think that's what has some markets rattled.
So first on theme parks, there's really a lot of moving pieces here. Can you provide color on global park demand and where you expect this protracted weakness? Maybe include the benefit from cruise ships, since you have 3 ships coming on over the next, 18 months or so. And with the stated fiscal Q4 mid-single-digit decline and the expectation that this will last for several quarters, is that the right level to think about OI as we think about fiscal 25?
First, just to sort of peel apart Q3, again, I want to emphasize, we revenue growth in Q3. The reason, obviously, is the IP is so strong in our parks. It really does attract a strong audience, and people are reluctant to cancel vacations. So while we saw a slight moderation in demand, I certainly wouldn't call it a significant change. That said, 40% of the experiences business is actually not domestic parks. It's either international parks or consumer products, and that's from an operating income perspective. 60% is domestic parks, including cruise ships. Within that, we saw attendance flat in the quarter, and we saw per caps up a little bit. We expect to see a flattish revenue number in Q4 coming out of the parks, and as we mentioned earlier in the letter, really just a few quarters. So I don't think I'd refer to it as protracted, but just a couple of quarters of likely similar results. Now, keep in mind, we do have some expenses attached to our ships coming in, and that'll affect us a bit in 24 and a bit in 25. But overall, I would just call this as a bit of a slowdown that's being more than offset by the entertainment business, both what we've seen so far and our expectations for Moana 2 as well as Mufasa.
Where's Bob Iger?
Great. Maybe first on the parks. any further details in terms of the softening and the flat revenues that you expect for 4Q and looking out into 25? I mean, do you expect attendance to continue to soften or potentially turn negative? And just any commentary on what you're seeing or expectations are on the per cap side. And then secondly, venue launches this fall. Just any expectations in terms of what it could do to trends in the linear business for you guys? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll take that. In terms of the parks business, I've kind of given you a lot of our expectation already. I'm not sure I'm ready to peel it down to attendance versus per caps. I think, again, we're going to be pretty consistent with what we saw in Q3. And we talked about the fact that, you know, the lower income consumer is feeling a little bit of stress. The high income consumer is traveling internationally a bit more. I think you're just going to see more of a continuation of those trends in terms of the top line. And then the bottom line will be reflective of the fact that, you know, we've got some one-time costs coming in and going out both this year and last year. I do expect to see international strengthen. Disneyland Paris has obviously felt some challenge due to the Olympics. Not a surprise, but something that happens. And the good news is the Olympics are over in a couple of weeks, and the booking will certainly look good in that regard.
That makes no sense.
Overall,
it does.
Yeah, when all the tourists leave.
Yeah.
Front.
Explain that.
And just one follow-up on the experiences segment. We generally think of parks vacations as being booked pretty well in advance. So it was a little bit surprising to hear about demand moderation within the quarter. So can you help us a little bit with how much visibility you feel like you have, and if it does vary by quarter, if there's maybe less advanced bookings in certain quarters versus others? Thank you.
Are we taking more questions than usual?
Yeah, to answer the question on ARPU, you hit both points correctly.
Yeah, and they're all
bundling
softball.
has a small effect, and then in addition to that, the shift to the ad model certainly has a small effect as well. From a profitability standpoint, we're pretty happy with whether people choose the ad model or the ad-free model. Regarding visibility, we do have very good visibility, which is why I'm emphasizing these are really all changes at the margins, daily visitors and late bookers and things like that. Looking forward, we have very good visibility into the book that we're expecting, which is why I've got a good level of confidence in the
Except not in Paris, while half the world is there for the Olympics.
Question, please.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.